Rob has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Financial Planning Magazine, the Daily Herald, and Money Magazine. He is the co-author of a book, The Four Corners, Where Your Estate Plan Becomes a Living Legacy, and he recently collaborated on the 3rd edition of the Florida Domicile Handbook. Rob speaks frequently to groups on mind mapping, differences between the generations, which we're going to hear about today, and charitable planning. Rob is a graduate of Wheaton College, along with some of the folks here at our luncheon, where he was a multiple-time NCAA All-American swimmer, not to be confused with an academic All-American, he wants to let you know. Although he is a brilliant man. I added that. Rob has been married for almost 25 years to Janine, and they have 2 wonderful boys, Dan, who is 15, and Calvin, who keeps Rob on his toes. He's 11. Rob is a diehard Green Bay Packers fan. Ooh. And and he enjoys competing in triathlons. I have had the distinct pleasure to work with Rob and his team in developing their strategic marketing plan. Please help me welcome Rob Odell.
Thanks, Vicki.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. That's very gracious of you. I'll have you call my mother-in-law later today. And I love Vicki. She's our strategic planner. And I'm going to pull a chair up here. Guys from Wheaton do well on bar stools. Anyways, Vicki, thank you. And she's our strategic planner. Got to know her a couple years ago. Enjoy getting together with her about once a quarter just to recharge my batteries. So if you get around Vicki, you get recharged. I want to introduce one friend of mine, Kyoko. Can you stay right here? So my friend Kyoko, he's studying at Wheaton College, leadership in the grad school, and I recently got to know him. We've become very good friends. First time in the United States. The reason why I like it is because he and I occasionally run together, and I can tell people I run with a guy from Kenya. It sounds real good on my resume. Today's presentation, how it came about. Let me just give you a little bit of the why behind it. I was down in Naples, Florida, back earlier this year, and a group of real estate agents asked me if I'd come speak to them on mind mapping, and that's my primary topic I usually speak on. And I said, okay, real estate agents, mind mapping, how am I going to gel this thing together? And because real estate agents like me, are there any real estate agents in the room here? Got one. Like me, we tend to be non-linear thinkers, ADD, okay? And so I'm thinking, mind mapping, how's this going to come about? And so when we set up our business 4.5 years ago, we really focused in on the baby boomers, and we learned everything we could about the baby boomers as a generation. In order to learn about the baby boomers, you need to learn about the boomers, the generation ahead and behind them. And we got all this data. We read tons of information, and we'd have conversations with clients or friends or colleagues, and we'd always bring up the conversation about the difference in generations. And so I was getting ready for this presentation with some real estate agents, and I figured, well, let's make it into 4 generations. Let's talk about that, then I'll tell them about mind mapping. And gave the presentation, and I think it was successful. And the reason why I think it was successful is they were very few of them were looking at their smartphones and texting in the middle of the presentation. So you're going to see that rendition of the presentation. I've given it 4 or 5 times since then to other groups of people. So this is kind of a new presentation. I hope we can have some fun with it. Something that's being passed out right now is I've put together a 11 by 17 piece of paper. This is for note-taking. Feel free to take notes. You don't have to take notes. It's for you. If you want to fold it, you can fold it in half, because we'll work on one side, and we'll start on the right side, and then we'll go to the left side. Okay, so my presentation today, we're going to have basically 2 parts to it. I'm going to start in with the generational divide, the 4 generations in the marketplace, tell you why it's important, what you need to know, how to approach, and what not to do. And then I'm going to talk about a concept called mind mapping, a tool which we use internally, externally, but we also use it to connect us between the 4 generations that we have as clients in the marketplace. I'll show you our process and how we apply mind mapping within the generations in about 5 minutes there. And then my presentation today, if you'd like a copy, a reader-only copy of it, so it's a web-based presentation, give myself, Heather, or John your business card, and we'll make sure you get that. And if you don't mind, we'll probably put you on our blog, and we send fun blogs out, not boring blogs about market summaries and all that boring stuff. So that's my presentation today, what we're going to go for. So let's begin. The 4 generations in the marketplace today. Technically, there's 6 generations alive today, but 4 in which you, as business owners, as people who interact with people, customers, clients, are dealing with are primarily 4. Why is this important? Well, why it's important is most people tend to communicate in such a fashion that they like to be communicated to. If you're in sales, you tend to sell your good or product or service in a fashion like you like to be sold to. That's great. However, when you go outside your peer group or your generation, how you go about communicating what you do or what your company does may or may not work with other generations. In fact, worse yet, it might backfire on you. I can give you some examples how that might be where you're working one generation and you do the exact same communication and tactic to the next generation and it comes back and haunt you. And so we'll talk about that. So let's begin. Starting with the oldest generation first. Who is the oldest generation in the marketplace today? Anyone?
Builders.
What's that?
Builders.
Builders? I've not heard that term.
I don't know.
That's how I got a new term. The old people. Well, that's a good term, actually. Slide it up here. They're called the mature generation. The mature generation is defined by people born pre-1945, pre-World War II. They're also known as the silent generation, the traditional generation, the builders. I like that. I have a new term there. Thank you on that. Born before 1945. Now, here's some of the characteristics that they have and just what this generation is known for. First of all, for those of us who are in the finance or banking area, this is the most affluent generation in today's society, in the United States today. They have the money. Their buying patterns are they come in and they buy and they pay cash for cars and tend to be debt free, the more affluent ones in this generation. What they're attracted to is name brand recognition. They like what they see in terms of established offerings. So if you work for a large firm, if you work for Wells Fargo, you'd trust Wells Fargo Advisors, who I work for, and it's name brand recognition. I'm going to give you an advertising of GM and how they positioned their product 20 years ago to this generation.
With the introduction of the 1992 LeSabre, Buick's reputation continues to grow. And it pleases us that people are taking notice. Because LeSabre isn't just another fine motor car, it's a Buick. And Buick is rapidly becoming an enormous symbol for quality in America.
Did you hear that? Symbol of quality. It's just not a fine automobile, it's a Buick. So this generation will gravitate towards organizations, products that have an established reputation to it. Now, some of the characteristics, now there's always exceptions to the rule, but some of the characteristics of this generation is that it tends to be more male-dominant when it comes to financial decisions. Not to be sexist, but that's the way they are. My former firm, this was the clientele we handled, and it was almost always the husband at the table talking to us. The wife may or may not be along. Eyes would be glazed over pretty quick in that regard. That's just kind of the generation that they had. They tend to work for one company, or maybe two companies. And the elder members of this generation had something called a pension plan, which we do not really know today. They're the first off-the-farm generation. They are known for an extremely strong work ethic. Now, some of the other characteristics that they have is when they get to retirement, they tend to hang it up, meaning that the engagement in life is not as high as the younger generations will be. They take doses of children here and there. In our world, they go to Naples, Florida, and we see them down there, and they're golfing 4 or 5 times a day or 5 times a week, and they're involved in their club. But again, they take doses of children. So that's kind of the characteristics that we see. One other aspect is that they put trust in the experts. So if you have some initials after your name, whatever profession you're in, if you've been in a community for a long period of time, they will place trust in you much more quicker than younger generations will do. So how do you approach this generation? Well, first of all, what not to do. Be very careful on how you apply technology. They're probably not going to be texting you at the middle of the night about whatever the good or service you sell or do. The chances are they're going to struggle. We have a hard time doing online meetings with this generation. In fact, most of the time we don't. It's eyeball to eyeball. Our dress code, it tends to be a little more formal. We tend to dress, this might be even underdressed the way I'm dressed right here, maybe suit and tie, because that's what they expect. And they tend to attend events. So if we do a client event, this generation will be there. They like that. And they like to spend time going out golfing and being wined and dined. Fun generation, it's affluent. That's good news. The bad news in that, for those of us who are out selling products and services to people, is in the next 15 to 20 years, this generation will pass on, and their money will also pass on to a new generation who views goods and services, how they go out doing it, entirely different than this generation. So if you have a business, you want to have it go longer than 10 or 15 years, you really want to pay attention in terms of how does that younger generation, how do they go in, research and buy products that you might be selling. Next generation, who is it? Boomers. Now this is the fun generation, a really fun generation to deal. You are. And I'm going to show you boomers how Cadillac sells its car to this generation.
The Wright brothers started in a garage. Amazon started in a garage. Hewlett-Packard and Disney both started in garages. Mattel started in a garage. The Ramones started in a garage. My point? You never know what kind of greatness can come out of an American garage. Introducing the 2014 Motor Trend Car of the Year, the all-new Cadillac CTS. Ain't garages great?
Catch it? What greatness coming out of American garages? That's a baby boomer commercial if I've ever seen one. Boomers are a fun generation, and some of the characteristics that they have is number one, before I get there, they're defined as 1946 to 65, known as the we to me generation. Chances are elder members of the boomers, they grew up at a table where there's a lot of people there around the table. Their siblings, mom and dad. They were meant to be seen but not heard. They were never, ever called special by mom and dad. Some of the characteristics, though, is that, number one, they're the most influential generation. Older generation, affluent, influential. President, vice president, CEOs, people, senior pastors of churches, majority of which are boomers. In fact, how many boomers we have in the room here? If you won the bet, is probably the majority. Yep. They're running society today. They're eternally young. What you never, ever want to do is call a baby boomer old. Don't do it. And there's a crisis going down in Naples, Florida, where's my primary office. There's a crisis down there. It's called a golf epidemic, meaning golf courses cannot get members. And some of them are going belly up down there because boomers are opting to bicycle over golfing. In fact, there's a picture behind me. It's the Bonita Bay Bicycle Club. And these guys, they're hilarious. They're in their 50s, 60s, or even some 70-year-olds in there. And they ride in these huge packs down in Highway 41 down there. But they're cycling now. Now, the other generation is known as a strong work ethic. Boomers, how they separated themselves from their peers is they're going to outwork their peer. Known as workaholics, 60, 70-hour weeks. This past summer, I was at the Global Leadership Summit. I heard Jeffrey Immelt from GE speak. It was actually kind of sad because he's known for putting 70 and 80-hour work weeks in. Now, how they make it up to their families is killer vacations, and they will do that and provide them lots of toys that way. 3 characteristics about a boomer. Number one, they like teams. They're team-oriented. The older generation would say, my team is my family. This generation is, if you can come in and solve a problem, an ailment that they might have, and be a resource to them, they will let you come in and be a part of their team. Their team members is that they want the best in breed. The best in breed advisor around them, whatever discipline that might be. You look at the cars they drive, the successful ones, they're defined somewhat by the cars they buy. Number two characteristic is that they're friends with their children. Boomers, I want to ask you, in the last 24 hours in the room, how many of you had text or called at least 1 or 2 of your adult children? Yeah, of course.
But did they answer?
Did they answer? That's good. We'll get to that. I'm having fun with that one. And the last thing is that in retirement, when they get to retirement, it's not retirement, it's called restylement for a baby boomer. They are not going to die. Remember, they think death is something you can take a prescription and get rid of. So they're going to be involved in life, whether it's an encore career, like Vicki often talks about, or heavy volunteerism. I know from my standpoint, the boomers that have retired, so-called retired, they're more busy now than ever because they grew up in a time of the United States when good things were happening, optimism, post-World War II, new things were being invented, and they have an optimistic, idealistic outlook on life, which translates into everything they do. So how do you approach a baby boomer? Number one, your story is important. Your story is important. The other generation is credentials, performance, history, tenure in the marketplace. For a boomer, they want to know your story. Now, you see a picture of Heather, my business partner there. When I'm sitting with someone and telling our company story, I often put this picture on the screen and say, this is Heather. And I basically tell Heather's story, not my story. And Heather's story is that she started working with me 14 years ago. Feels longer like that for her. That's nice. So she started working with me as an administrative assistant. I was actually sharing time with her, another advisor. He was having her do cold calling. She'd be in tears at the end of the day. I was giving her financial planning stuff to do. She gravitated towards it. We had dinner with my former partner and her in 2003 at the Mill Creek Inn, and she said, I want to become a certified financial planner, which was a long leap where she was at that point in life. 5 years later, she became a CFP. Took her a bit, but she did a great job at that. When we started Wheaton Wealth 4.5 years ago, we said, Heather, do you want to become a partner? It means writing a check and putting skin in the game, and she did. And so Heather today is one of the best CFPs I know out there, period. I tell that story is for two reasons. One, it's the truth, but two, it resonates with a baby boomer. And a boomer sits there, they'll nod their head and say, oh yeah, they can relate to that. That's our success story. All the things to look at, kids matter. Whether they're building a house, buying cars, doing a financial plan, their kids matter, and they want unique, customized solutions tailored to them. Doesn't matter the product, good or service. They're kind of wired that way. Now, when we work with them, the older generation likes to be wined and dined. The boomers is kind of a spectrum there. The elder members, they might like that. The younger ones, probably not. But really guard their time. So if you're going to engage with a boomer, just I know the time box that you're working in. And then the other thing is that they prefer in-person meetings. They like community, they like koinonia, bring it together. But they can also, the younger members can go virtual with you on that. And finally, when you're asking for the business, show optimism and ask for that business. That's the boomers. Next generation. Who's the next generation? X. Generation X. Let me see the Xers. Where are we here? Generation X? Keep the hands up. Keep the hands up. Okay, look at these people. Look at me. I'm a Generation Xer. We are some of the mistrustful, unfriendly, cynical, skeptical people. You can put them down. I'm sorry. Put them down now. I'll put mine down too. That's just, we're wired that way. Skeptical, cynical. If there's someone in your life you kind of resent, chances are it might be a member of my generation. So here's how Cadillac positions its message to the Generation Xers.
That's mine.
That's mine.
That's mine.
That's mine.
Come on, Kyle.
That's mine, Kyle.
Revenge is a dish best served with 272 horses. The Cadillac ATS.
We are known as the cynical stalkers. We were born in 1966 through 1980. We are about 60 million live here. If we think about the characteristics and what we grew up in, I remember we know things do not go according to plan. In 1974, I'm 8 years old. I'm watching TV, and this is one of my first political memories ever had.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
So we know things do not go according to plan. We have a built-in phony detector. When someone gets up in front to speak and they have initials after their name, we're going to be a little skeptical. We're going to ask questions why. We know that, we've seen space shuttles blow up. We've seen preachers fall from grace. We've seen a president get impeached. We just have a sense of cynicism to us. That's the way we are. We're also a latchkey generation and the real first generation of divorce. So when we'd come home from school, in grade school, often there'd be no one there. So we got used to kind of working by ourselves, kind of more a little bit in isolation, and that's kind of how we operate. And today, we value our time and more so than our money. And so we kind of like to be left alone, get our work done, I want to go home. That's the way it is. We like boundaries. Definitely like boundaries. Don't come in and micromanage me. I'll get my work done. Done. Another area is we're the first generation to research online. We will go out and look at goods and services and products. I think I heard the average time a person spends online in this generation looking at cars is 16 hours. So when they show up at the car lot, they know everything about that car, maybe more than the car salesperson might. They know the financing arrangement. And all of a sudden, the salesman manager routine that often happens, it becomes more of a facilitator versus a salesperson. My wife and I, we were contemplating a move to Florida this past year, and she researched every house that had 4 bedrooms, 3 baths in Collier counties in a certain zip code and certain neighborhoods, and she knew more than our real estate agent down there knew about it. Amazing. And she knew more about the schools than they did. But we are a very tough prospect to deal with. Very tough. But that's the bad news. The good news is once we become converted and we buy goods and services, no matter what they are, and we like them, and it's reliable, and we are served by that person or people or firm or store, we will tell everybody we know, good or bad, on that. We'll tell everybody we know, become the best referral givers. We're also the most loyal of, the research shows, the most loyal of the people that are out there. Now, two things about us is that we are tension with the boomers. The boomers are our boss. They tell us what to do, and we tend to like to be work alone. And that's something we just kind of have to deal with, intra-businesses, if you will. And we're the primary recipients of the wealth that's coming down. So if you're selling products, goods, services, we think entirely different than the older generation. Let me give you some examples on that. Well, first of all, dealing with us, how many of you, who said did they answer the cell phone? Who said that? Okay. A characteristic of a Gen Xer is we'll see a call come in, we'll see the caller ID, who it is, and let it go to voicemail immediately. And then about 30 minutes later, we'll email back to that person answering their voicemail. Or wait, how many people have had that happen to? Anyone? That's a Gen Xer characteristic that way. When dealing with them, load them up with information. Give them as much information, be as transparent as possible, give them every option. Don't try to smooth over anything because that phony detector will kick in and they'll say, you're hiding something. That's kind of the way this generation's wired. I have something here, it's called the 5-Star Wealth Advisor. And I'm going to pick on that just for a second here. August 2010, our second month in business, I received a phone call from the 5-Star Wealth Advisor program saying I had been selected in Wheaton Wealth Partners as a 5-Star Wealth Advisor. My firm's 2 months old. We have 3 clients. We made less than $10,000 since we started. I said, really? How'd you find us? He said, well, we surveyed your clients and your peers, and you've been nominated. I go, which clients did you call? He said, well, it's classified. Well, I can call them right now in 5 minutes and call you back and we can figure that out. Well, I hung up, thanked them for the call, hung up, said not interested. What that caused me to do is get online and research what is a 5-Star Wealth Advisor. Well, it's paid advertising. It's paid advertising that advisors will buy. And the guy over there, Max Tailwagger, is a dog. And his owner is a guy named Alan Roth, a financial planner in Colorado Springs. And he bought it for his dog. His dog is a 5-Star Wealth Advisor. But my point is this. If we put this on my website, and if I had that out there on my wall, and I can think of my Gen X client, in fact, I can think of one right now, Keith. If he saw that, he would Google, look online, it's advertising. Why is Odell doing that? And he would have a field day at my expense. I would not do that. And he'd still be my client, but he'd like to have fun at my expense. 2 points when dealing with him. Do not try to be a Gen Xer's bestie, best friend. They have their friends. If you do any type of entertainment, they're probably not going to show up because they have their friends. My friends are here. My advisors, the people I buy from and interact with on a commerce are here. And let's keep the 2 separated. When you communicate with them, stay on point. No jokes, idle chatter. It's going to go right over them. Whereas the older generation, the matures, their parents, they like that sort of thing. Yeah, let's tell stories about the kids and jokes and, oh yeah, 5-Star Wealth Advisor, that's really cool. Younger generation, doesn't work. Time box your meetings, 30 seconds of pleasantries, get right to the point, cut to the chase. Last generation, the millennials. I imagine many children here. Any millennials in here that's defined as born? Okay, they're good. All right, let's talk millennials here just for a second here.
I read the majority of an article online about how older people are becoming more and more antisocial. So I was really aggressive with my parents about joining Facebook. My parents are up to 19 friends now. I have 687 friends. This is living. What? That is not a real puppy. That's too small to be a real puppy.
Toyota Venza. Keep on rolling.
Millennial, 85 million strong, defined as people born post-1980. This is the whatever generation. Now, there's another generation they're doing research on right now, born post-2000, known as the I gen, little I like iPod. But this is really 1980 to 2000, this generation. Some of the characteristics is that when they came out of the womb, the camera was on them and they were on stage. They were praised, protected, and programmed by mom and dad. They were always called special. They influence mom and dad, especially in areas of technology. This generation tends to delay life, meaning they get married later and starting families. Boomers, they usually got married in or right after college. This generation, 30s. They have huge goals, no real specific plans. Their view of work is much different. Now, another aspect is that they're not dependent on... No. I tried. They're not dependent on superiors for knowledge. So if you're working with them, you don't need to be teaching them knowledge information. You might be mentoring them, but not teaching them certain areas. They're cause-driven. Remember, these are the children of the boomers who are idealistic. They're cause-driven. They want to be a part of a bigger mission, if you will, and they need financial advice, but they can't really afford to get it, in my world anyways, in the wealth advisory world. Approaching them, texting. I'm not sure if I'm seeing the millennials text here, but that's how they like to communicate. I was talking to one guy in the back. He's saying he had his sons over watching football, 7 of them. They're all texting during the entire game. Social media, very, very big. If you want to have this group come to your place of business, you want to have a social media presence. You want a functional website. Very important to have that. Snippets, meaning 3 minutes. These people need to be entertained, and they like community. So that's kind of the functions of how the millennials work. So there you have it, 4 generations. I know I'm watching my time. I'm trying to be real time sensitive. I'm starting to get down here in time. I briefly want to introduce you to a concept called mind mapping. Now I'm going over to the other side of the page. Mind mapping is something that is a part of our DNA, internal and external. We were introduced to it right before we started our firm. And everything we do has a mind map to it. When Vicki showed up to do our strategic plan, she brought her flip charts and Post-it pads and markers, and we said, nope. So, Vicki, you're going to mind map. And we... Yeah. So mind mapping, just to give you an idea, and I'll show you how we use mind mapping to communicate and weave between the generations, what each generation sees within the mind map. Mind mapping, I liken it to March Madness in that the bracketology, I'm not a big basketball fan. I'm a Packer fan, but this is, in March, I love looking at this because the brackets. It just appeals to me. It's very aesthetic to me. And the reason why it is most people are not linear thinkers. The human mind is not linear. In fact, some of us are more nonlinear than others. A friend of mine gave me this book that you see in the back there, ADD on the Job, Making Your AD Work for You. It's 300 pages, no pictures. I didn't make it through the preface before I tossed it aside. And the reason why is the human brain looks like this going on. That's not linear, left to right, top to bottom. That's what's not happening inside the human brain. That's what's going on there. And so what mind mapping does, it seeks to capture what's happening inside the human mind and helps you organize, store, recall, and present information. In fact, what you're doing right now on the paper, for those of you who are taking notes, that is a mind map. It's the way the human mind kind of thinks. And so what happens is we can use mind mapping applications for note-taking, problem-solving, brainstorming, strategic planning, Vicki, document management, presenting, and book writing. Those are the functions that we use it for. We use it for everything. And so when we look at a mind map, and right here, this is what a mind map, a very base mind map looks like. So 2 weeks ago, I had Kyoko, my friend here at my office, and I wanted to learn more about Kyoko. I could have done it one of 2 ways. I said, Kyoko, if you could write me just four paragraphs about yourself, or just tell me about yourself and your family, your job, your hobbies, and what your bucket list is. He could start doing that in linear fashion. He could tell me verbally, or I could have him draw it out on a piece of paper or on a screen with a computer program. And we did this. And so Kyoko and I did this. We put on the upper right his family, what he does for a business, the farm in Kenya, as well as his ministry that he has in Kenya, his goals, and then what his bucket list, if you will, is that he wants to do. And after about 30 minutes, I had a real connection with Kyoko and where he's from. We Google mapped his village in Kenya and put it there. But this is a base mind map. Mind maps come in all forms and styles. This is a strategic plan that you can use it for, and writing a business plan. When we were getting ready to move, and we didn't move, we're staying put here in Wheaton, my wife and I, we put together a mind map just charting all the details that you have to put together in doing a cross-country move. My son, Dan, he is more of a linear guy, thinking-wise, but he has his own mind maps, as does my non-linear son, Calvin, and they do mind mapping all the time, and this is what Dan tracks his running progress that he does here. And then church notes that you can take notes, conferences, churches, what have you, on mind mapping. And so why is important mind mapping for the generations? Well, the older generations, they come to us, they're looking for organization. They want, remember, it's male-centric, male-driven. Husband comes in, he always is going to die first, that's what they tell us, and he wants to make sure when he dies, his wife and future generations know where everything's at. It's an organizational tool that we use mind mapping for. The boomers, They're cool, remember? They're the fun generation. It's husband and wife showing up, and they're exploring, thinking about what their future in retirement is going to look like. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Where are they going to go? And the problems they're going to solve and the community that they're going to create in their children. So they use it as a brainstorming opportunity to figure out where they're going. Gen Xers, us, the cynical guys and gals, we use it because it displays total transparency. We can see everything in front of a screen right in front of them. And for the millennials, it's like that song, what was that song, Heather, we were talking about, 100 Years to Live? It kind of lets them see what they can expect as they go through their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and things that they need to be looking at as they age in order to have a successful end game when they're done. I know we have like 1 minute left. Resources. If any of this stuff sounds interesting I've talked about, I'm happy to share. And I can send you this mind mapping software on a reader-only version so you can have access to all this information, as well as some of the attachments that we have in the documents here. Gen Savvy Financial Generation Insights. There's a guy named Cam Marston. Great guy. You can Google him. He speaks on the generations. You'll realize that I'm a plagiarist when you listen to Cam. He's the master. I'm the student. There's no doubt on that. But he's written some great materials. He has books that you can buy. For those in the financial world, he has a Gen Savvy Financial Advisor. It's $10, 60 pages, lots of bullet points, so us ADD people can relate to that. He also has other books that would, if you're in sales, in terms of retail sales, highly recommend him. Very, very good guy. Met him 2 years ago. I was speaking in Dallas. He was speaking right before me, and he's, I mean, it stinks to speak behind someone who's really good. So that's Cam Marston. The software for mind mapping, and this is something that we'd be happy to do. If you ever want to come in and just mind map your business or how mind mapping might work for your business, we'd love to do it. John, Heather, and I would love to do that. 2 programs we use. We use Mind Genius for one that we use for our business programs. What I'm presenting to you on right now is MindMeister. It's a web-based company out of Germany. Mind Genius is out of United Kingdom. And then we have some articles we've linked into this map. And that's it. How am I on time?